I've never built a building, but those in the know say that before you build up, you need to dig down. Before you lay a brick on the wall, you need to dig a hole in the ground and you need to fill that hole with concrete. In other words, if you want the building to stick around for a while, you need to make sure it has a good foundation. And Jesus knew this. He uses it in a parable. He talks about the wise man building his house on a rock while the rookie builder builds on the sand. The house on the rock, it remained. And the house on the sand, well, that guy had to relocate. He's still finding sand in his pockets. Jesus wasn't simply given architectural tips. Foundations aren't just important for buildings, they're also important for worldviews. Foundations. Every worldview must begin with a foundation. In other words, every worldview must have, at bottom, something to believe before believing anything else. The philosophers call this one thing, this starting point, the ultimate or final reference point in predication. The alternative to a foundational starting point is what the philosophers call an infinite regress. No one wants an infinite regress, right? Well, this simply means that there is no starting point. There is no one thing to believe before believing anything else. There is no final, at bottom, foundational because. Essentially, it is A is true, because B is true, because C is true, and then times infinity. An infinite regress is a sequence of reasoning which never comes to an end. It's like constantly adding zeros to each other to try and get a one. To not have a starting point, an ultimate because, is the first feel in worldview. Three other feels. The first other feel is to not have a meaningful explanation. You see, every worldview must provide a meaningful explanation and understanding of the big three we looked at in the last video. They must explain what is real, what is true, and what is good, and how we can know those things. If a worldview can't account for and explain these things, then it must be discarded as an invalid worldview. The next feel is to be arbitrary. A worldview cannot explain or account for something without an authoritative, objective source. In other words, the moment the words, in my opinion, or I just feel, is used in a worldview discussion, we should be concerned. This is what is known as being arbitrary, and it automatically invalidates your worldview. The next feel is to be inconsistent. If a worldview clashes with itself in some areas, then we have problems. A worldview cannot contradict itself. It must be consistent. Inconsistency in a worldview immediately makes it invalid. The four feels of worldview are as follows. First of all, to have no foundational because. Second of all, to have no adequate explanation for one or all of the big three. Third, to be arbitrary. And fourth, to be inconsistent. So my goal is to show you that the Christian worldview does not commit any of these feels, but the no-God worldviews do. And I want to show you that the Christian worldview is built on a solid rock, while the no-God worldview holders have built on the sand.